The world can be a very different sort of place, depending upon the scale one views it at. Every day, stories both wondrous and terrible unfold all around us. Yet most of the time, we fail to take notice. Let us consider just one of these little everyday terrors so often overlooked. Imagine, if you will, a towering citadel of stone and mortar rising over the arid plains. A great city with millions of inhabitants and lush gardens at its center. The residents toil away, tending the gardens, harvesting the crops, and drawing water from the wells in the lowest underground levels. Many groups venture out into the surrounding wilderness, foraging for yet further sustenance. One day, a strange shape appears on the horizon, a vast looming form that draws steadily nearer to the city. The residents hide behind their defensive outer walls as the creature approaches. The world shakes as the Titan raises a clawed limb and a breach is torn open. Yet this is only the beginning of the terror. A monstrous shape enters the breach and makes its way swiftly through the city. Its form is long and slender, like a worm, and it is covered with viscous slime. It rushes down passage after passage with incredible speed, and any citizen it touches is immediately snared. As this monstrous form withdraws, it becomes clear that it is the tongue of the nightmarish giant outside. The tongue pushes into the city again, bearing no trace of the previously captured inhabitants, and more of the city's denizens are swept away. Soldiers rush to defend their home, but it is to no avail, as they also vanish down the monster's throat. Eventually, when its hunger is sated, the beast withdraws and vanishes once more over the horizon. In the wake of this destruction, there is little to do but rebuild. The city's inhabitants close the gap in the outer wall, and life continues on in this somewhat less populous citadel. One might imagine this to be some sort of horror story, or a fanciful tale of a marauding kaiju. Yet it is no fiction. In fact, this little drama is played out many times every day in various parts of the world. However, as might easily be guessed at this point, this is no tale of any human settlement. Rather, it is the chronicle of a termite colony, specifically the mound-building termites that are so commonly found in the tropics. As to the nightmarish Titan, it might be one of any number of creatures. There are several varieties of mammal that are specialized to feed on the eusocial insects. Some of these species can be surprisingly large, showing just how plentiful their preferred food source can be. There are 5 groups in particular that are highly specialized for such diets. These are the echidnas, the pangolins, the armadillos, the singular species of the aardvark, and of course, the anteaters. There are many vertebrate species that feed on insects, and quite a few of these are mammals. In some cases, insects are merely a part of a broader diet. A hedgehog would be a good example of this. These spiny little creatures are certainly not averse to consuming insects, but they will eat just about anything else that is available and not particularly noxious. Despite often being called insectivores, shrews are similarly broad in their dietary preferences. Moles are a bit more carnivorous overall, but even these creatures will happily prey upon most small invertebrates they happen across in the soil. If anything, they are more specialized for feeding on earthworms than insects. Among smaller mammals, an insectivorous habit doesn't really require any particularly unusual adaptations. After all, the prey is not all that much smaller than the predator in such cases. If anything, the would-be insectivore requires similar behaviors and adaptations to those one might see in a more conventional carnivore, albeit on a smaller scale. One intriguing and rather unexpected example of this is the grasshopper mice, in the genus Onychomus. These little North American rodents are ferocious predators, often taking on highly venomous prey like scorpions and centipedes. As such, they have a degree of venom immunity. They are also rather aggressive towards other sorts of mice, if they encounter them in captivity at least. Somewhat oddly, they make vocalizations in a manner not unlike the howling of wolves. However, given their size, these howls come out as shrill little squeaks, so far as human hearing is concerned at least. Moving on to somewhat larger insectivores, we find the numbat, Myrmecobius fasciatus. This little creature is a marsupial native to Australia. The genus name Myrmecobius roughly translates to ant life, and this is somewhat reasonable. In fact, the numbat feeds on termites rather than ants. The species name fasciatus more or less means banded, and it is a reference to the stripes on the numbat's body. Patterning aside, this particular mammal doesn't look all that unusual. If somebody were to describe it as a striped squirrel with a pointed snout, the picture wouldn't be all that far off. However, this creature does have a number of adaptations to its diet. The teeth are reduced, while the salivary glands are enlarged. The tongue is quite long and slender and coated with sticky saliva, and thus functions as a sort of probe to extract termites from their nests. The front limbs have reasonably robust claws for breaking into said nests. Among the larger insectivorous mammals, these features are nearly universal to some degree or another. As endotherms, mammals require a considerable amount of food. The only way to realistically meet such requirements with a diet of insects is to focus upon the eusocial insects. In other words, the larger insectivores must specialize in feeding upon ants or termites or some combination of the two. No other insects have the same reliable high numbers and population densities. Thus, over and over again, we see some version of strong claws to break into defended nests. The teeth tend to be either reduced or highly modified, or absent altogether. In many cases, the stomach includes some version of a gizzard to pulverize food after it has been swallowed. The snout is narrow and pointed, and the tongue is long, slender, and extensible. All of these adaptations are perfect for raiding nests, though they may seem rather odd otherwise. Another couple of features often found in the larger specialized insectivore is a relatively small brain and a relatively low body temperature. After all, one does not require particularly deep thoughts to break into a termite mound and lap up a meal. A larger brain would consume more energy, as would a higher body temperature. It also helps that most of these creatures are found in warmer parts of the world. Granted, this is partially due to the abundance of ants and termites in tropical and subtropical regions. However, it is also easier to maintain a functional body temperature without needing to fight off a cold environment. There is another curious adaptation seen in many of the insectivores, though not all. There is often some form of body armor. This is especially evident in the armadillos. There are 21 known species of armadillo alive today, and all are found in the New World. Most are confined to South and Central America, and many exist only within isolated regions of South America. I hardly need to describe an armadillo, as most people have at least a passing familiarity with the famously armored mammals. The armor is typically a modification of the skin. Plates of dermal bone are covered by keratinized scutes derived from epidermal tissue. Perhaps the most successful armadillo species is the nine-banded armadillo, Dasypus novemcinctus. This creature is in the family Dasypodidae, sometimes called long-nosed armadillos. It is found throughout much of South and Central America, as well as the southeastern United States. This species is something of a generalist, though eusocial insects do make up a significant portion of its diet. It has the habit of jumping several feet into the air when startled, which can be rather exciting, and unfortunate if the thing that happened to startle it was an approaching car. Perhaps more unfortunate is an odd little biological quirk. Unlike virtually all other mammals, these creatures can carry Hansen's disease, also known as leprosy. It is possible for them to transmit it to humans, so it is probably best to leave armadillos alone in the wild. Besides this, their claws can inflict rather unpleasant wounds. The only other family of armadillos is the family Chlamyphoridae, which includes all living armadillo species outside of the genus Dasypus. The armadillos in this family tend to have shorter snouts and a slightly different arrangement of armor. There is a surprising range of sizes among the species in this group. At one extreme is the giant armadillo, Priodontes maximus. Not surprisingly, the giant armadillo is a relatively large creature that grows up to 1 meter long, with an extra half-meter added by the tail. It may have anywhere between roughly 80 and 100 teeth, though these are relatively small molars as seen in many of the other specialist insectivores. At the opposite extreme is the smallest armadillo species, Chlamyphorus truncatus. This creature is typically around 4 inches long when fully grown. Known as the pink fairy armadillo, this species has an array of pinkish armor plates covering its back and the top of its head. The rest of its body, apart from the paws, is covered in white fur. Overall, its shape is rather reminiscent of that of a mole, and this is no accident. This creature is a burrower, found in the grasslands and dunes of central Argentina. One last variety of armadillo to consider is the three-banded armadillo. This group includes 2 species, both in the genus Tuliputes, found in different regions of South America. These particular armadillos are somewhat famous because of their ability to curl up into a ball as a form of defense. No other armadillo species can quite manage this little trick. Another armored variety of insectivore would be the pangolins in the order Pholidota. There are 8 known species of pangolin in the world, found in Africa, India, and Southeast Asia. Alas, many of these species are endangered to some degree or another. The armor of pangolins consists of a series of overlapping scales made of keratin. They are structurally and developmentally different to the scales found in many reptiles. In essence, these scales are derived from the same sort of epidermal growth as hair and fingernails. The resulting overall appearance suggests an anteater that dressed itself up as a pine cone. Like the three-banded armadillos, pangolins can curl up into a ball as a form of defense. The head is tucked away beneath the long tail, often vanishing entirely from sight in this posture. The scales tend to have rather sharp edges, enhancing their protective functions. Most pangolin species are arboreal to at least some degree, as many termite nests in the tropics are found in trees. The ground pangolin, Smutsia teminkii, is often found in open habitats. Rather than climbing like its relatives, it tends to walk along the ground on its hind legs, with the large tail counterbalancing the front of the body. Thus, in appearance at least, we have an anteater dressed like a pine cone walking about like a T-Rex. Really, it is oddly adorable. The third group of armored insectivores is the echidnas, native to Australia and New Guinea. These creatures are sometimes called spiny anteaters, which is appropriate enough, as they are covered with a coat of sturdy spines similar to what one might find on a hedgehog. However, these are not closely related to anteaters. All of the echidnas are monotremes, and along with the platypus, they are the only known egg-laying mammals. There are 4 known species of echidnas, with 3 in the genus Zaglossus and 1 in the genus Tachyglossus. The Zaglossus species are found in New Guinea and have relatively long snouts. The species Tachyglossus aculeatus, also known as the short-beaked echidna, is found throughout Australia as well as parts of New Guinea. It is by far the most abundant and most well-known of the echidnas, as its cousins tend to be confined to the more remote mountainous forests of New Guinea. Incidentally, the species name Tachyglossus aculeatus roughly translates into swift tongue and thorns. This is fairly appropriate, as the short-beaked echidna does look rather thorny with all of its spines, and its tongue does move quite quickly when it feeds on termites. Like the pangolins and the three-banded armadillos, the short-beaked echidna is quite capable of curling up into a ball. Of course, with all of the sharp points, This particular defensive posture has quite a bit of offense built in. It is worth noting that all three of these armored varieties of specialized insectivore are not especially close relatives. The echidnas are obviously distinct from most other mammals. Genetic analysis places pangolins close to mammals like dogs and cats, while the armadillos are more closely related to sloths and the more conventional anteaters. It would seem that these creatures fill similar niches as armored insectivorous mammals in different parts of the world. An interesting case of convergent evolution. Another such case may be found between the aardvark, native to Africa, and the anteaters found in Central and South America. First, let us consider the aardvark, Orycteropus afer. This creature has a very distinctive appearance, resembling a sort of cross between a pig and an anteater. Its name is roughly derived from the Afrikaans word for earth pig, in fact. Actually, the aardvark is not especially closely related to either the pigs or the anteaters of the New World. It is the sole living species within the order Tubulidentata. Going by genetic analysis, its nearest relatives would be creatures like tenrecs and elephant shrews, as well as elephants, hyraxes, and manatees. Much like other large insectivore specialists, the aardvark has strong claws on its front legs, a narrow snout, and a long sticky tongue. It also has relatively large ears, allowing it to listen for the sounds of termites and other small insects in the soil. Perhaps not surprisingly, its sense of smell is similarly well developed. Oddly enough, there is one aspect to the aardvark's diet that makes it quite unique among the specialist insectivores. In addition to consuming termites and ants, it also eats the fruits of a plant sometimes known as the aardvark cucumber, Cucumis humifructus. These plants are cucurbits, and their genus includes the actual cucumber as well as the cantaloupe and honeydew melons. As for the aardvark cucumber, this is the only species in its genus that has a fruit that develops underground. Apparently, the flower is above ground and the developing fruit is pushed beneath the soil. The aardvark digs these fruits up and consumes them, and new plants germinate from the creature's droppings. Moving to the New World, we find the anteaters. There are 4 known species of proper anteaters. The smallest of these is the silky anteater, Cyclopes didactylus. It is an arboreal creature with a prehensile tail. If one could imagine a pangolin with brown fuzz instead of scales, that would be fairly near to what this species looks like. At an intermediate size, we have 2 species of tamandua. The northern tamandua is found mainly in Central America, while the southern tamandua is mainly found in South America. Both species have fairly striking fur patterns. They also have a fairly unique defensive display. A threatened tamandua will stand on its hind legs and hold its front legs out to either side. It looks like it is asking for a hug. Whatever you do, do not try to hug this creature. The claws that are so effective at ripping apart insect nests are also quite effective at ripping a person apart. The largest anteater species is the appropriately named giant anteater, Myrmecophaga tridactyla. It can grow to 7 feet in length and has a very distinct appearance. Even among insectivores, its snout is quite long and narrow. It also has a large bushy tail that it sometimes folds over itself to sleep under. The genus name Myrmecophaga roughly translates into anteater, while this species name Tridactyla translates roughly into 3 fingers. This refers to the 3 claws on each of its front feet. One of these 3 claws is quite small, while the other 2 are relatively large. To keep these front claws suitably sharp, the giant anteater walks about on its knuckles. The back feet have 5 small claws each, and the anteater walks on these feet in a more conventional manner. This large insectivore can be found throughout much of South America, and more southerly portions of Central America. It appears to forage for termites and ants out in open places, while it seems to prefer to rest in more secluded forest environments. Like the other anteaters, this species has no teeth. The tongue can extend to about 1.5 feet, and it can move in and out of the mouth up to 3 times per second. It has backward-facing papillae on its surface, helping it to more effectively snare the little insects it feeds on. As with many other specialist insectivores, the tongue is anchored to the sternum rather than the hyoid bone. Overall, the giant anteater may well be the most extensively modified termite and ant specialist among the mammals. However, it is perhaps not the most surprising. That distinction might easily go to an altogether different sort of creature. It is funny how often one finds fairly well-established rules in nature and then finds exceptions to them. One such exception is a rather singular sort of creature known as the aardwolf, Proteles cristatus. It is found in eastern and southern Africa and shares its range with the aardvark. As one might guess after considering the aardvark, this creature's name is roughly derived from the term earth wolf. It is not a wolf, however. Rather, it is the one known species of insectivorous hyena. It looks much like other hyenas, though it is considerably more slender, with an almost delicate appearance by comparison. Its molars are reduced, and it does not feed on carrion. Though these creatures may sometimes be seen standing over various remains, it appears that they are feeding on the insects attracted to such sites. The tongue of the aardwolf is fairly tough, and, as with other insectivores, it is relatively sticky. However, the aardwolf lacks the specialized snout and massive claws seen in aardvarks and anteaters. Rather than digging into a termite mound, the aardwolf tends to lap termites up off of the ground. Instead of a slender tongue to clean out tunnels and passageways, the aardwolf tongue is quite broad, perfect for taking up more insects out in the open. Granted, they also take up a fair amount of sand and dirt along with the insects, but such abrasives likely aid in the digestive processes within the stomach. Now, one should not suppose that the aardwolves just randomly wander about looking for termites in the dirt. In fact, they regularly visit termite mounds to feed on the foragers traveling into or out of such locales. They even memorize the mound locations within their territories, visiting them infrequently enough to allow the termites' numbers to recover. This is just as well, as apparently an aardwolf can consume as many as 250,000 termites in a single night. To human eyes, all of these creatures are biological oddities, though many may be regarded as almost cute in an alien sort of way. To the termites and the ants, each of these is a ravenous titan, a destroyer of cities, a living apocalypse. The kaiju may be fiction to humans, but to these little insects, such monsters are all too real. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have enjoyed today's little foray into the unknown. If you are still curious and wish to venture a little further, here are a few things you might consider looking into. If you found this video enjoyable, do feel free to leave a like. If you believe others might enjoy it, by all means, share. If you wish to see more of this channel, a subscription should prove quite helpful. Until next time.